Welcome to Listening Well. So excited to join you today. I'm Dr. Riana Elyse Anderson here with Erick, the architect. Erick, in my Detroit place, we would say "What up, though" as a greeting. So, what up, though, to you today?
What up, though? What up, though?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's how we can kick it off. We're here to talk mental health, so let's dig in. What is it that you're seeing individuals dealing with in the mental health space?
I think a lot of the things that we experience every day using social media becomes something that we use to compare. And I don't think it's healthy for us because our definition of what we feel is success should be valued by self. And I think a lot of it comes from what other people have, especially what things look like. And a lot of the distractions that we experience are through the phone. And we're all guilty of that. You know, we're all guilty of using the phone to communicate, but then it becomes something to define. And I think that's harmful for us. You know, when we look at things like expectations, where you should be at this point of your life, depending on how old you are. You're 20 years old, you're 30 years old, you're 40 years old. You say, well, I should have this. And then now we have this thing that we could actually depict and see and say, this is what it should look like. And I think that over time is harmful. If you don't remove yourself from that, you don't have time to actually figure out what your own self-reflection is. You can find yourself hurting yourself, you know, and these are things that I don't know how to begin to repair them when it's something that we use every single day, you know.
So, Erick, you've tapped into something really important, and we know that social media, especially for young people, right, especially for the folks that are, as you said, looking around and comparing themselves to everyone around them. I always talk about this lunchroom phenomenon where it used to just be your local lunchroom. You're going to your high school, you're looking around, you're seeing what everybody's wearing. But now you have access to all the lunchrooms, right? Like you get to see what's happening everywhere, not just in the U.S., but across the world. Mm-hmm. But I want to bring that into your music because in your last album, when you're talking about this concept of futures, like I'm really wondering what young people, what this future is like for them. Like where, as a psychologist, I'm just really wrestling with what we can do to think about a more positive future for them so that they know it's okay to be different. It's okay to look around and to see people who might look like they have something different from you. So I'm just wondering if we could get into that futures kind of thought for the young people with respect to what you just said.
I think that we need idols. And I think that for hip hop music particularly, I think Mos Def on Black on Both Sides on 1999, he said something like, people ask me what's going on with hip hop. And the answer is whatever's going on in the world. The thing that hip hop is, it's a current events. It's the newspaper. So if something happens tonight, you know, we're responsible for talking about it tomorrow and maybe even tonight. You know what I'm saying? So I think that looking at people, especially other musicians that look like me, were really helpful for me to grow up. Watching somebody that had a message, it doesn't mean that you have to be super conscious or super positive. Just have to be real. And I think that you need people that look like you sometimes for you to have that validation, only because sometimes you say, well, that doesn't apply to me because we are so different. So the more people that continuing to promote a message, it doesn't matter. We all look and feel different. But if we're all doing it, that person that feels alone is going to be like, well, he said that. So you can't only say, well, it's not my job, or somebody else is going to take care of it, because maybe that person is waiting for you. These young people are waiting for you to open your mouth. I think that hearing somebody be vulnerable, to me, is the most powerful thing you could possibly experience. It's like, damn, you crying, man? Wow. That makes you feel like, I had to cry earlier and I held it in. Or damn, I had a little episode this morning, and you know, it's almost like you don't feel alone. It's impossible to feel alone when you witness someone be empathetic. I think that's what we need more as a community, as a people, as a society. And music, somebody like, say, I don't know, DMX, right? DMX, rest in peace to him. Lived as an orphan, and he made this comparison of his dog, right? And we know our dog is our friend, right? But man's best friend is a dog, and this guy was talking about a literal animal. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's wild. And then he embodied the character of an animal because of how much it meant to him. And he's like, I didn't have friends. I had no family. I lived in a shelter. This guy was hurting through drug addiction and a lot of pain, but he made it so that it was okay to be vulnerable. You know, he made it so people could look at him and say, you could look like me and go to church. You know, you could look like me and experience pain and ask for help and to know that something is wrong. And I think if it wasn't for a guy like that, even though him and I are completely different artists, I learned so much from what he taught while he was on this earth. And even though he's not fit here in the physical, his music lives on because of the fact that it was so impactful. It was so honest. And I think that's where the healing comes from. It comes from people not being scared to be themselves.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that connectivity again. So I think one thing that you keep bringing back to us is the ability for a number of things to connect us, whether it's community or music, but to think about this loneliness epidemic that we're going through right now. We've been more connected through devices than ever before, but more lonely than ever before as well. And that's leading to depression, anxiety, stress, PTSD, so many things for so many people because they're not feeling connected. So I just really want to thank you for bringing that into focus for us. One other thing that popped up for me as you were talking, it got me thinking about another podcast that I heard you on. You mentioned these rules around how men in particular are supposed to be, and you just brought it back into focus when you talked about not being able to cry, right? I listened to Music Soul Child yesterday, who was talking about, first thing that I was taught about being a man was to never cry, work till you die, got to provide. And I thought again about these rules that you brought into focus. So talk to me about these rules. What are some of the things that, especially for Black men, we are being told is the thing that they have to do? And how do we start to break that down in our mental health space? How do we become more vulnerable?
So much is put on Black men to be, it's a personification. It's something that's like malleable, right? Where it's like you say, well, as a Black man, this is the things that I'm supposed to be responsible for. These are the things that my perception is part of why I'm this way. When you're in the hood and you see somebody struggling, you be like, yo, he crazy. Mm-hmm. And you go to other neighborhoods and that same kid's parents have their son or daughter in therapy. And in my neighborhood, we're like, that's crazy. Therapy's for crazy people,
Absolutely.
And they're like, well, my son suffers from autism and da 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 da. And in my hood, that kid is crazy. So when you look at, and that's just about race, when you look at men and women, that's something else. But just on the surface level, you have like one community of people not even understanding what bipolar disorder is and not understanding what, anything is. It's an umbrella of information that we're not being tapped into. We're not accessing it. So it just becomes something that we almost like don't understand. So we just define it as like, yo, that's crazy, bro. And like that same crazy person will hopefully never harm themselves or someone else, but you can eradicate those things if you bring knowledge into it. And I think that because those are not, we don't champion that in our neighborhoods the way that, say in suburbs or upper class neighborhoods, when they see somebody struggling, they reach out because, for whatever reason, it's accessible to them. We define it as something different. It was never cool to be soft. It was never cool to be like, yo, I'm hurt. You hurt my feelings. As a Black man, like you don't want to be personified as being soft. We have so much against us. We're targeted by so many things. We feel like the moment that I show you that I'm soft, you're going to take advantage of me. And soft just doesn't, there's nothing wrong with being, having female qualities. There's nothing wrong with being empathetic or understanding. But because we're so hardened by society, we feel like there's something wrong with being feminine. There's something wrong with getting your nails done. There's something wrong. Like, bro, if that's, you got hygiene, you got preference, you have all these things, just do what you want to do. Like, who gives a crap? Why does this matter? Like, but it's ingrained, and it's even as for me, it's hard for me to say it right now because it's like, yo, shut up. It's like, nah, but the thing is, bro, like, we are this way because we are protecting ourselves. It's not because we're so ignorant that we think it's wrong. It's like, yo, we live in fear every day, from, racism to police to, our own people, to gangs, to violence, to crime. We are the personification of a lot of like dark, negative stuff. So in turn of that, in the other side, it's like, yo, nah, I'm never going to let you see me cry. I'm never going to cry. I'm never going to cry. I'm never going to let you see me sweat. I'm never going to, and that comes from, I have to hold my own. And, I don't think it can change without people having open discourse to talk about their feelings. And it can't be looked at as like people going to judge you after you leave here, because we all suffering from something, and that has to begin there until there's actually immediate change within our society, our people, and the world.
That's some good stuff. And you've been talking for a bit about this thing, and let's just go ahead and label it. You've been talking about stigma, right? Like what it means for us not to be able to take advantage of these resources that are available to us. And we come up with and reinforce these rules that have been put on us for so long as a result of racism oftentimes, right? So one thing that I'm very clear about is there are reasons that Black people may be unable to say, I am tired, I want rest, I want to like leave this thing, I want peace, because in a lot of ways there were scripts and there were messages to us that if you do that, there are consequences, right? And it's been generations of that consequence, whether it was in slavery time, whether it was in civil rights movement time, where you could not rest because there were real consequences there. So I think it's really important that we make that connection between some of the things you were talking about with stigma and racism. So maybe in as we're starting to close up, I'm wondering, first, let's just get this on the table. Like, have you encountered racism even for yourself, and how has that impacted your mental health? How do you think stigma is going within our community? Are we reducing it? Like, let's get into some of those stigma and racism issues here.
Yeah, I've experienced quite a bit of racism. I think because, like, on the surface level, I'm a Black dude with long hair. My hair used to be longer, so I had a little bit more, what's the word? There's more of a stigma of what that looks like or whatever. But it's also what I chose to do with my life, right? So, like, I'm a musician, I would never look at a rapper or whatever as being a personified thing, a stigma of someone who's uneducated or unaware or ignorant, because some people choose to do certain things. It doesn't matter. You could be an ignorant doctor, it doesn't, those things don't, just because you have schooling, just because you don't, it doesn't make you something. Who you are is who you are. And I think that the racism or stuff that I experienced is almost like, and this doesn't define me, but it's like, I went to school still, I studied graphic design. I've accomplished things in many different types of artistic endeavors, not just music as a rapper, but I will be devalued or stripped down from being an artist, or they rather use the word rapper, even though I produced all of my music for a long part of time. I have accomplishments that show that I'm multifaceted in the things that I do, but I'm still reduced to just being a rapper. And I think because that's one of the things that I did, it's racist to actually just be like, you're a rapper, because if you were a doctor or another occupation, you would have to establish all the things that person is, not just reduce them to the thing. And a person will actually be projecting that there's something wrong with them, and they're uncomfortable because I'm comfortable. It's like, why is this guy so, you look like an artist? And it's like, okay, you may have an aura about you, but I don't think that we should be looking at people and making so many presumptions where you're opening your mouth and projecting things because you don't know what that person is going to say or how they're going to take your thing. I'm actually grounded, so I can almost hear. I've heard some of the worst things being said to me from, especially from traveling, and I've never reacted in a way that was, you know, as a young guy. Of course, you get into altercations, and but you need, you still want to be here 20 years from now. You don't need to be in prison. You don't, especially because of kind of what you talked about with civil rights and Jim Crow and the 60s. There's so much ingrained in our culture that make us angry, but we have to understand that like the only way to improve and to change the future is to exist now, and we have to be here as long as we possibly can. We can't be incarcerated. We can't be mentally warped and changed, because it does affect you. And then when you have children, you teach those children the same things that you were exposed to. So it's a cyclical problem that will never stop until you make a change. And I don't ever see it changing until we fully understand this and have the opportunity, to be seen the way that we'd like to.
That's beautiful, beautiful words. I think the best question for me to follow that up with and to wrap this up with is, what would you want the future of mental health to be? What would you want for your people, for the youth? Like, what do you want the future of mental health to be for them?
I would like for everybody to be comfortable in the skin they're in. I would love for there to be viable assets for everybody, whether it's, recreational centers or after school programs implemented into school, history lessons to be taught about especially where you're from, and your people. I think that it doesn't matter what race you are or what religion you are. I think that there should be specified things for who you actually are. You learn about everybody's culture, but specifically for you, I think that helps mental health because you have questions that you grow up with and you're 40, 50 years old. If you were never taught that as a kid, you wonder why you weren't. Was that hid from me? I think that starting there, education is going to be primarily, that's the biggest change. It's having the assets, having the information. That's how you build a will. And I think that the future of mental health begins with that. It begins with us having the assets in front of us. We're not looking for them. There's so much in your face that you can't say that you don't know. And I don't know where to begin, but I know that that's a start for sure.
Well, Erick, you just went all up in my lane as a psychologist, thinking about socialization. How do we talk to our children? How do we talk to the next generation about who we are, what's important for us? And in today's conversation, what I'm hearing you say is the conversation to our children has to be about connecting, about disconnecting. So connecting with each other, disconnecting from various elements that they think might be so important, and tapping into oneself. So with that, I just want to thank you so much, Erick, the architect, for your time today. Again, this is Dr. Riana Elyse Anderson with Listening Well. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.